In 1985, Congress accidentally created one of the largest wildlife restoration projects in American history. They didn't mean to. They were trying to fix a soil erosion crisis and stabilize farm income across the Midwest. The wildlife part wasn't in the plan. 36 million acres of plowed farmland went idle over the following decade. Into that grass came species that hadn't been seen in those landscapes in living memory. Duck populations that had been collapsing for 30 years, pheasant numbers at historic lows, grassland birds that biologists were quietly categorizing as in freefall, a 30% rebound in duck populations, 25 million additional ducks produced in one region in 11 years, a pheasant population so directly tied to a federal agricultural program that state hunting seasons expanded and contracted with enrollment numbers. None of it was the stated point. The point was soil erosion. In 1985, Congress passed a provision called the Conservation Reserve Program inside a routine farm bill. The idea was simple: pay farmers to stop farming their most erosion-prone land for 10 to 15 years. Plant it with grass. Reduce surplus crops, reduce topsoil loss, stabilize farm income across a Midwest in the grip of an agricultural crisis destroying family farms by the thousands. The bill had an economic rationale, an environmental rationale, and a political rationale, none of them involving ducks. The goal was soil conservation and agricultural economics. Nobody was talking about wildlife. Nobody was planning for it. The ornithologists and the waterfowl biologists were not in the room when this bill was written, and nobody called them afterward to explain what was coming. No one planned for the bobolinks and the mallards and the white-tailed deer. They just moved in, slowly at first, and then faster, as 36 million acres of unplanted grass quietly became the largest piece of wildlife habitat created in the United States in the 20th century. The 1985 Farm Bill didn't emerge from nowhere. It was a response to a landscape that had been systematically dismantled over the previous 40 years. The Great Plains had been under agricultural pressure since the Homestead Act of 1862, but slowly, unevenly, with room for wildlife to persist in the gaps. The transformation accelerated dramatically after World War II, when new machinery, new fertilizers, and new federal price supports made it economically rational to plow every available acre. Between 1950 and 1985, millions of acres of native prairie, grassland that had been growing, evolving, and supporting wildlife for 10,000 years, were converted to row crops. Wetlands were drained for irrigation and tillage. Shelter belts were removed to accommodate larger equipment. The hedgerows, grass waterways, and brushy field margins that had provided habitat between crop fields disappeared. The results for wildlife were measurable and severe. The surveys told the story in numbers that conservation biologists of the era found deeply alarming. By 1985, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service spring surveys found mallards, pinetails, and blue-winged teal at or near their lowest population levels in 30 years of monitoring. Grassland nesting birds, bobolinks, meadowlarks, dickcissels, were declining across their entire range. Pheasant populations in the Midwest had dropped to levels that hunting organizations were calling a crisis. The land had been farmed down to something that could barely support the species that once lived on it. That's not hyperbole or a conservation organization's framing. The FWS surveys confirmed it with 30 years of declining numbers, species by species, region by region. The question nobody in the agricultural policy debate had thought to ask, because it wasn't an agricultural question, and nobody in the room was there to ask it, was what might happen if some of that land were given back. The Conservation Reserve Program didn't look like wildlife policy. It looked like agricultural economics, because that's exactly what it was. The farm crisis of the 1980s was destroying family farm operations across the Midwest. High debt, low commodity prices, chronic overproduction that kept pushing prices further down. At the same time, topsoil was leaving the Great Plains at rates that alarmed soil scientists. Congress needed a program that addressed both problems with a single payment. CRP did it. Pay farmers a rental rate to remove their most vulnerable land from production, reduce both erosion and surplus crops simultaneously. The mechanics were straightforward. Farmers submitted bids ranked by an environmental benefits index, a formula prioritizing the acres most likely to produce real environmental returns, and signed 10 to 15-year contracts. The land had to be planted in protective cover and couldn't be farmed or grazed for the duration. In exchange, the farmer received an annual rental payment based on local land values. It wasn't glamorous policy, it wasn't even conservation policy officially. It was a farm income support program with an environmental component carefully attached. The people who designed it were not thinking about ducks. By 1992, over 36 million acres had been enrolled, roughly the size of Iowa, spread across the Great Plains from Texas to the Canadian border, concentrated in exactly the regions where prairie had been most intensively converted to cropland over the previous century. The soil erosion numbers improved almost immediately. Sedimentation dropped. Water quality in rivers began to turn around. Farmers received stable rental income, while commodity markets punished those who stayed in production. By almost every measure the program had been designed to achieve, CRP was working. What nobody had predicted, and what the program's designers hadn't included in their models, was what would happen to the birds. Here is what 36 million acres of idle grassland actually produced. In the Prairie Pothole Region, the glacially formed landscape of potholes and wetlands stretching across the Dakotas, Minnesota, Montana, and Iowa that produces the majority of North America's ducks, CRP transformed nesting conditions almost overnight. Ducks nest in upland grassland within a few miles of open water. They need dense, completely undisturbed cover to hide their nests from predators. For 3 decades before 1985, that cover had been systematically removed from the landscape. CRP put it back. Researchers studying the Prairie Pothole Region documented a 30% increase in duck populations since 1992. The program was estimated to have produced 25.7 million additional ducks in the region between 1992 and 2003 alone, a number so large that when waterfowl managers first published it, some colleagues questioned whether it could be accurate. It was. Pheasants responded with similar intensity. Ring-necked pheasants, introduced from Asia in the 19th century and now the signature game bird of the Midwest, had been declining for decades as the dense nesting cover they needed disappeared from farmed landscapes. CRP enrollment in South Dakota correlated so directly with pheasant populations that the curves on a graph of the two variables are almost identical. Enrollment rises, pheasants rise. Enrollment falls, pheasants fall. The state's hunters noticed. Hunting seasons expanded and contracted with CRP enrollment so reliably that outfitters used enrollment figures to predict booking demand years in advance. A federal agricultural program had become, functionally, the management tool for the state's most economically important wildlife species. What nobody planted for, what simply wasn't in any of the Environmental Benefits Index calculations that determined which acres got enrolled, what wasn't mentioned in the congressional debates about the 1985 Farm Bill, what wasn't in the cost-benefit analyses that justified the program's rental payments, was the grassland songbirds. Grassland birds are among the most rapidly declining species in North America, a group that had been sliding toward crisis for decades before anyone recognized the scale of the problem. Bobolinks, meadowlarks, dickthistles, Henslow's sparrows, birds that nest in dense grassland, require large unbroken patches and cannot use the fragments left by intensive agriculture. As native prairie was converted to row crops through the 20th century, these species had nowhere to go. They didn't decline the way forest birds declined when forests were cut, visibly, dramatically, in ways that generated public concern. They faded quietly, their numbers dropping steadily in the background of a landscape being systematically optimized for production with no room left in the calculation for anything that didn't generate revenue. CRP fields turned out to be exactly what these birds needed. A study in North Dakota found that CRP fields covered only 7% of the state's land, but supported 27% of its sedge wren population, 23% of its savanna sparrows, 22% of its grasshopper sparrows, and 19% of its bobolinks. 7% of the land carrying a disproportionate fraction of the birds. The program didn't save grassland birds. Their populations are still declining, measurably year over year. Native prairie is still being converted to row crops faster than CRP enrollment can offset it. But without CRP, the numbers would be worse, and researchers have modeled how much worse, considerably. In a landscape with few wins for this group, where almost every trend line since 1966 has pointed downward, 36 million acres of unintentional grassland is what a partial win looks like. The rate of decline is slower than it would have been. In conservation biology, that gap between the decline that happened and the decline that would have happened is what you fight for, even when it doesn't feel like enough. The wildlife story of CRP is also a story about what happens when a program expires. CRP contracts run for 10 to 15 years. When they expire, farmers can re-enroll or return the land to production. As commodity prices rose sharply in the late 2000s, re-enrollment became less financially attractive. The rental payments offered by CRP couldn't compete with the income from farming the land at high crop prices. Between 2007 and 2014, CRP enrollment fell from about 36 million acres to roughly 24 million, losing, in 7 years, nearly a third of the conservation habitat that had taken 2 decades to accumulate. The farmland that came out of CRP went back into corn and soybeans, driven by commodity prices that made agricultural production more profitable than the program's rental payments. The wildlife response was almost immediate and exactly what you'd predict. Pheasant populations in South Dakota tracked CRP enrollment downward. Duck recruitment in the Prairie Pothole Region declined sharply as nesting cover disappeared again. The 2014 Farm Bill capped enrollment at 24 million acres, locking in a ceiling below what the program had demonstrated it could do for both habitat and wildlife in the decades before. It was an experiment nobody designed and nobody wanted. Take the grass away, see what leaves with it. It took about 3 years for the data to come back clearly. Pheasant harvest figures, duck population surveys, breeding bird counts from the Prairie Pothole Region, every metric that had climbed with enrollment reversed as enrollment fell. The relationship between the land and the wildlife that had returned to it was not incidental, not coincidental, not something that could be explained away. Remove the cover and the birds follow it out. The whole preceding 30 years of recovery confirmed in reverse, species by species, region by region, survey by survey. I keep coming back to the gap between what the program was designed to do and what it actually did. The congressional staff who drafted the Conservation Reserve Program in 1985 were thinking about soil erosion rates and farm income stabilization. They were not thinking about bobolinks. They were not running models on what 36 million acres of idle grassland would mean for duck recruitment in the Prairie Pothole Region. That wasn't the assignment. And yet the outcomes were real and documented in a way that planned conservation programs often aren't. The species that moved into those fields didn't know or care that the program was about soil erosion. A nesting mallard finding undisturbed grass cover 3 miles from a pothole doesn't know or care that it's sitting on a 10-year USDA contract. The bobolinks that returned to fields in the Dakotas and Minnesota in the late 1980s weren't responding to federal policy. They were responding to grass. The grass happened to be there because farmers needed a government payment to make idling the land make economic sense. I find that accidental quality, the wildlife outcome that emerged from a program designed for something else entirely, more interesting than almost any conservation story planned from the beginning. The accidental recoveries tell you something the planned ones can't. They show what a species actually needs, stripped of assumptions. The birds didn't care about the program's stated objectives. They cared about the grass, which means the grass was the answer, and the rest, the economics, the soil erosion calculations, the rental payment formulas, was scaffolding. The planners got the soil erosion reduction they had paid for. The birds got their grassland back without anyone asking permission. Nobody intended both outcomes, and yet both happened, at scale, over decades, documented in the breeding bird surveys, the duck population counts, and the pheasant harvest figures. Drive through the Dakotas during early summer and you'll see CRP fields from the road, stretches of tall grass and wildflowers that break the grid of corn and soybeans, usually marked by the absence of anything planted in straight rows. Stop the car. Listen. In a healthy CRP field in June, you'll hear meadowlarks and bobolinks and the distant rattling of pheasants before you see anything. Above a wetland edge, you'll hear the sharp calls of nesting ducks. These are not sounds you'll hear across the fence in a cornfield. They are sounds that weren't there 40 years ago, in the same geography when everything for miles was plowed. 36 million acres of accidental prairie. A duck population that rebounded by 30%. 25 million additional ducks in one region over 11 years. A pheasant population so tightly connected to a federal program that hunting seasons expand and contract with enrollment numbers. And grassland birds, still declining, still threatened, but declining more slowly than they would have without grass that was planted, officially for reasons that had nothing to do with them. The CRP is still running, still enrolling land, still debated in every new farm bill over how many acres, at what rental rates, under what conditions. The program, designed to address a soil erosion crisis, became one of the most important wildlife conservation tools in the country's history. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because the birds don't distinguish between stated objectives and unintended consequences. They just need the grass. If you want to find the places where the largest unplanned nature recoveries quietly happened, where the wildlife showed up because the conditions changed, whether or not anyone meant to change them, subscribe. That's what this channel covers every week. Next week, a different country, a different accidental intervention, and a species nobody expected to benefit.